I was gonna record this with the full intention of this being the coup de grace of my channel, just where everything decides to go downhill like it hasn't already been basically rock bottom the entire time I've been doing it. So I want to just come out and say I don't necessarily believe everybody has the same idea of what this is. I think my perspective is solely based on the definition of the actual term itself, and I think that the extremities of it don't necessarily apply to me. But this is me coming out as somewhat of a proud narcissist. I don't think everybody understands what it really means. Just to be very brief here, the actual definition of narcissism is the excessive interest in or admiration of oneself and one's physical appearance. The term excessive, I feel like, can be subjective to some point, because I always think I'm the shit and I'm fucking awesome. I do all this awesome shit and I think I look good. I don't have a problem with that. I don't actually see an issue with me living my life that way. So that's the actual literal definition of the word, which is basically what I live my life around, because I don't really understand the problem with it. Everyone associates this with a dubious amount of problems, or Twitter will just bombard posts about narcissism and this is what a narcissist person does, and it's just a bunch of gaslighting and so many other problems. So psychology says selfishness, which I don't have a problem with. I think being selfish is important. I think you should always prioritize yourself to some degree. Maybe you shouldn't prioritize yourself to be the number one priority in your life. I have children and I have a girlfriend and I have parents, people that I do genuinely care about, like my friends. So selfishness involving a sense of entitlement, and if we entitlement is another scary word, right? Entitlement is literally just defined as the fact of having a right to something. It's yeah, I have the right to live the life that I want to live. I feel entitled to that. So I feel like that applies pretty well here to say involving a sense of entitlement. I am selfish. I do feel entitled to live the life that I want to live, that I'm going to deliberately go out and create. So I don't have a problem with that yet. A lack of empathy. Yes, I don't care for everybody. I cannot care for everybody. But that does not mean a complete lack of empathy, that I'm completely devoid. It doesn't say that. Even psychology doesn't say that. It just says a lack of empathy, which I generally can't, I'm not Clark Kent, I'm not Barry Allen, I can't save the world. Sorry. I do care about what I can control, but I don't care about what I can't. It's just the United States, and everybody's always talking about politics and all of this and that and outrage, and it's just a bunch of nonsense that no one really actually cares about. And a need for admiration. Yeah, it doesn't specify if I go and deliberately try to get this from other people. I specifically need the admiration from myself. I think it's very important to me specifically that I do that, and plus I do enjoy getting admiration from other people. I don't necessarily need it from other people, but I know I need it from myself at least, or maybe from my children. I need to at least be the person that I want to be and get this, because it's a nice feeling to have. It's not a bad thing to be selfish. It's not a bad thing to be entitled to living the life you want to live. I don't generally go out and try to mess with other people. I try to do my own thing and try to just live a good life and be as quiet as possible about it. And this is psychoanalysis. I'm not exactly sure what this entails. Self-centeredness, which I don't have a problem with, arising from failure, which was never established in psychology or the actual definition. But if they did a psychoanalysis, or if they did multiple test results, or maybe I've had a decent amount of failures in my life. Perhaps maybe because of those failures, I have become driven to maybe perceive myself as successful regardless. So that's why I just kind of default to living a happy life is good enough, and what I'm doing is good enough, and I don't need more than just my own. I read these definitions and I'm like, this doesn't seem that bad. This doesn't seem what Twitter or what anyone that talks about it does, because they just say all this extra shit. Everything is a mental disorder nowadays. Somebody had told me that I'm very bipolar or some shit, which I've never gotten a diagnosis for. But yes, my mood can change very quickly. Now, every single time my mood changes, I go, I have a reason for that. Like something just pissed me off, or like something just made me happy. Like I have a purpose for that. Like I don't think people understand that. So when people called me bipolar, I was confused because it like happened so quickly. I guess maybe that's where they got that from. But when things are happening quickly and I'm perceiving them quickly, yes, so maybe I'm just changing moods fast. But that's when things actually happen. Like it's not always just like tiny things. And if there are tiny little triggers, I usually just cope with them with coping mechanisms. I just don't like being around people who are generally upset for extended periods of time for the same thing. Like I don't have a problem with people being upset about different things as long as it doesn't like ruin their entire day and I'm forced to be around that person for an extended period of time. I get very annoyed when I'm like living with someone miserable. I just can't do it, which is why I'm very happy that I have not subjugated myself to that for a while. A narcissist prayer, that didn't happen, which is just gaslighting right there. And if it did, it wasn't that bad, which is still just gaslighting. And if it was, it's not a big deal. And if it is, it's not my fault. If it was, it didn't mean to. And if I did, you deserved it. That's just all gaslighting. That's like a whole different thing. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation in which the abuser attempts to sow self-doubt and confusion in their victim's mind, which is exactly what this is doing right here. It literally says, that didn't happen, trying to tell them to be confused and give them self-doubt. And if it did, it wasn't that bad. Like, they're just associating that these traits, I guess, belong to a narcissist. But that's, like, not what the definition of narcissism, like, is, like, at all. Like, all it literally says is excessive interest in or admiration of oneself and one's physical appearance. Like, that's literally it. The only negative thing I saw in here was arising from failure. Like, that was, like, the only actual negative thing. I don't understand it. Like, they act like, people will act like being selfish is a bad thing. I think it's very important to prioritize yourself. I think a lot of people who have depression and anxiety who don't, like, prioritize themselves, or they have a hard time seeing themselves as a priority, I think that's like 90% of the problem for their feelings, because they feel like they don't matter, which is really sad. And I genuinely hope that people who are dealing with stuff like that and have any kind of self-doubt, I genuinely hope that you feel better and get help. So yeah, that's basically all I wanted to touch base on. I feel like it's just like a lot of people will go around and they will post about narcissism and say, this is bad, here are the traits, and then fucking proceed to explain a whole ass sociopath with numerous issues. And I don't necessarily see self-love or self-admiration as a terrible thing. I can't say that it leads to good things sometimes. I think, of course, if you have an inflated head and inflated ego, you may not be thinking with your full brain. You might not be, but I wouldn't sit there and say that everybody who has, like, narcissistic traits is. So that's basically all I really wanted to talk about. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Cancel me if you want. Sorry. Love you guys.
Complete.